Hey guys, Viridian USA back with you. We're just going to show you, we've showed you in a couple of other videos, one being the complete disassembly and breakdown of our Extreme pump. At this point we're just going to show you how to go back together with it, how to completely reassemble it after we've disassembled it by showing you how each piece goes together. So we're just going to start with the rocker, and he's going to insert the exhaust side of the rocker first, and if you'll notice he's putting the exhaust valve, he'll make sure his exhaust valve goes in the poppet hole in the bottom of the head first before trying to align the actual rocker on the pin of the pump. Once he gets this in, he's going to put his counterweight and his counterweight spool on, and you'll notice that he put his counterweight on and the exhaust valve was to his left. That's something really important because it does matter which side the counterweight goes on versus which side the actuator rod goes on. So when he's putting his counterweight and his counterweight spool on, the exhaust valve is always going to be to his left when he's doing that. Next he's going to insert one spring guide roller, and then he's going to put his actual actuator rod on along with the other spring guide roller. In the last video we showed you guys how to properly remove the air poppet valve. We showed you how it was hexed and how it just feeds down through the head of the pump. And he's just going to put it right back in just as he took it out and reinsert the lock nut on the poppet valve. Once that's on, he can put the other side of his rocker back into place. Make sure he lines it up on the pin, and at that point it's just a process of screwing his poppet valve into the block that's already inserted into the rocker. Somewhat of a tedious process just because the parts are so small. Once he's got that in, he's going to put his cap screws back in his rocker. You want to be sure that when you're putting that in there, notice he just barely tightened these. You want them tight, but you don't want to over tighten them. You've got pivot arm spindles in there that, you know, if you over tighten, it can strip out if too much torque is applied. So you just barely want to snug that. Right now he's setting his air inlet valve. We're going to do another video for you guys to show you a more detailed explanation on how to set up this rocker mechanism and how to properly go through the settings that concentrate a little more on that, because there are some important steps that need to be taken to ensure everything's correct. Notice that when he's done, he can wiggle this exhaust valve a little bit. He knows it's not too tight nor too loose, and he's ready to go back on with the float. One thing that he just did, and of course he does this every day so he knows, but the top two lines, that's going to indicate the top of your float. You've got a top trigger point, a bottom trigger point, and then you've got a free floating point that the float should free float at in any kind of liquid, whether it be leachate, water. So he's got this in properly. His next step is just a matter of aligning the actuator rod and then tighten this bracket up. Key thing on this is just making sure that everything is in line. For example, you don't want your actuator bracket rotated 90 degrees because this is obviously stationary. So once he knows that everything's in line, then he can eyeball that and look at it, and then he can go ahead and snug it up where it's supposed to be. Actuator rod just simply pops back in place, and then he's good to go. The next step would be, after reassembling all this, is to set the float and make sure the float is set correctly, along with a air test in this. For the sake of just showing you how to reassemble the pump and showing you how everything goes back together, we're going to skip that for right now and come back to that in a later video that's going to demonstrate exactly a detailed process of how to do that. You can just simply take some pressure, apply it, snugs it down in the casing past the O-ring. We can just simply screw his bottom check valve in. He can take his bottom check valve wrench. Once he gets to the O-ring in the bottom check valve, it's going to be very difficult to do it by hand. It's not going to be able to do it. So that's when he can take his bottom check valve wrench and spin it on past the O-ring and ensure that it's tight. Once the O-ring is inside the casing, the seal is made. So there's no real reason for him to just really over-tighten it once the O-ring is passed. So like I said, it's sealed once the O-ring's in. I want to show him one more thing, another easy way that, sometimes in the field you don't always have the option of having the jack stand in the vise, so he could easily stand this pump up on the ground, take his bottom check valve, align it up there, screw it in, and then put it back in the vise and tighten it up. He just always wants to make sure that the head of the pump is in the vise and not the casing, so that nothing spins and he can tighten this bottom check valve up securely. So that's it for this reassembly. Check out some of our other videos as far as how to really demonstrate how to break down and set the rocker mechanism, along with setting the floats and cleaning the pumps. See you guys soon. Thanks.